Welcome to another episode of Comedy Wham Presents with me, your host, Valerie, and sometime co-host, Miss Purrington. ComedyWham.com is your place to go for features about all Austin comedy. We bring you articles and podcasts featuring the best in Austin comedy in all its shapes and formats. The podcast project began in early 2016. We love interviewing funny people and sharing their stories. I like to delve into a comic's background and motivations, and will sometimes take a detour along the way. Consider the interview a way for you to get to know the folks that make the Austin comedy scene one of the best in the country. And now, Comedy Wham presents our guest, Nikita Redkar.
Hi.
Hello, welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me here.
Thank you for being patient with rescheduling.
Of course.
And all the logistics.
Oh, yeah. Life is full of logistics. It's totally understandable.
Constantly. Yeah. How's your pup doing? Is he doing better?
My
or
pup,
she?
It's a he. Yeah, I'm not too weird about pet genders in general, because I know some people get very defensive about that. No, but he is a he, and he is doing better.
Good.
Thank you for asking.
Well, I like to kick these off by asking a one-word answer for the question, a word to describe your past.
The first word, honestly, that came up in my mind was tumultuous.
Ooh.
Yeah. That sounds negative, but I wouldn't say it is. I've moved around a lot.
Okay.
And so I started off, I was born here in Austin, and moved to Phoenix when I was like 1 or so. Don't really remember it as much. Came back to Austin. And then I moved to China.
Oh, wow.
For, I would say like 3 to 4 months, something
oh my gosh.
ridiculous like that, just because my dad had this job offer, and then it, like, for some reason it didn't go through, so we had to come back. And I just remembered doing like 1 or 2 days of school there, and I hated it, as any new kid would hate adjusting. And I come home and I was like, Mom, I don't like it here. And she was like, okay. And then the next thing I remember is we're packing up to go back home. And in my childish 5-year-old brain, I was like, that's all it took.
Yeah.
I just had one bad day of school, now we're going home. And I feel like even at that young age, I was like, this is a shitty thing to do. I feel guilty about this.
As a parent, I can tell you that child manipulation is a thing. It's a real thing.
But not packing up your bags and moving halfway across the world again for that. So, that happened. And then my dad got another job offer in Singapore. We were supposed to be there for 3 years. Ended up staying there 10.
Wow.
And that was most of my childhood. So I stayed in one school, but like the turnover rate of people there was very high. So I always was making new friends or losing friends very quickly. So that kind of adds to the rocky past of not really like mentally being in one place at one time.
Yeah. Well, if you were there that long, one of the things that I like to ask the comics is, were you watching or reading comedy? And I remember asking Ty about this because he grew up in Vietnam, and he said, "No, I still watch some things." 'Cause in the days of the internet, unlike when I was growing up, that stuff is accessible, and Singapore is a fairly open country. It's not one of those countries that shies away from the global community, shall we say.
Yeah. So it's definitely, people used to call it I'm saying, this was my version of it. I call it the weed of Asia, because it's definitely the gateway into Asian culture and society, because it definitely has like a lot of Western culture aspects. It's just like a seamless transition for anyone who's wanting full Asian experience, but doesn't want, like full immersion. Yeah. So there was definitely a lot of TV and comedy that I watched. I would say not the stuff that most people watched, because people grew up with a lot of good stuff. Like they watched Joan Rivers or Carlin, and my comedy was like Nickelodeon and just like very childish stuff like Kenan and Kel and all that. And all that is what like the kids' version of SNL. Right. And my parents actually would be a little bit more they would monitor my TV usage a bit. So I wasn't like watching stand-up at a very early age.
Sure.
So not as cool of an answer as you've probably gotten, but
hey, I've gotten Garfield as an answer, so
okay.
So
Garfield, I understand because there's like a lot of cynicism in that cat, and it could mold some of the comics here. Let me guess who said that.
We can do that off mic.
Yeah.
Okay, so you spend 10 years in Singapore, and you say 10 years because then you go another place.
Yeah, after that, I came back to Austin.
Okay.
And so I did about half of my high school here.
Okay.
And then went to college. And then I spent a year in Germany as a part of a study abroad program. And my family was in Germany at that time, too. Okay. So it just worked out perfectly that way. Wow. And then, then I came back, finished college, and now I'm here.
Wow. I'd heard somewhere that you spent time in New York. Did I do my homework wrong? Okay, good.
No, I did. Okay. I actually started my first open mic in I did my first open mic in New York.
Okay. Well, let's dig into that. So you come back to the States, spend time in Germany, come back, and at this point you're probably watching or listening to things that we're more familiar with. How does the let me get on stage moment happen?
That happened not because of TV as much, but because I was dating a comedian in New York, full disclosure. And he would do all these open mics. Okay. And the way I started is so egotistical. And people have asked me this so many times, and I just feel like guilt talking about it because basically I would go to open mics with him and I would see all these other New York comedians. Some were great and some were terrible. And I would watch them and be like, oh, if they can do it, I can do it, that kind of thing. And at that point I was already pretty active on Twitter and Facebook, and I was already posting funny statuses and tweets. And I had that part of my brain churning. And I was like, if I could only flesh it out into something more than 140 characters, I could give this a shot too. Yeah. So I did, but it took me almost a year after that initial thought to actually get up on stage and do something, just because I was so terrified. And I've always kind of had stage fright. I read in school at one point that more people are afraid of public speaking than spiders or death or something. Those two things are so far apart, but something that most people should be scared of, they're less scared of that than they are of public speaking.
That's right.
And I felt like I definitely fell into that branch, but I guess, that my ego just took over and was like, nah, let's give this a shot. Yeah. And so I did my first open mic in the summer of 2015. So, around August of 2015.
Wow. Can we step back? Because I want to visit like that actual experience and, getting over that stage fright. And I do want to dig into that. But one of the things that when I Google your name, you have a lot of writing credits to your name. And I don't know if it's a stretch to say, with all these writing credits, the writing had to have come more naturally for you.
Yes.
Were you seriously that frightened of just being on stage? Because if you're a credentialed writer, I mean, you've got that part down.
Right. And the nice thing about writing is I get to hide behind my cushiony, soft computer screen. Not everyone on there, mind you, is as, comforting, but you have more time to think about your words and what you're going to say. And being more spontaneous and thinking on my feet is always something that I felt like I sucked at. And then that's where the stage fright factored into. It's not that I was scared that I couldn't write something worthwhile or I couldn't present it. It was more like, what if I'm in a situation where someone heckles me or I trip and fall on stage, which has happened before. And like, how am I going to pick myself up from that and make people laugh and comfortable? Yeah. So that was what I was scared of. And then like still to an extent to this day, something that I'm working on. But I did start off as a writer.
Yeah. That first time, do you remember the name of the the club that you were?
Yes, I do. It was the Greenwich Village Comedy Club.
Okay.
Very small basement right underneath the Comedy Cellar.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I performed on a stage that was the size of half a bathtub. And I couldn't see anyone in the audience. Complete darkness. And this is what I learned later. So first time, if I can talk about this.
Of course.
So first time I did that mic. It was my first time doing stand-up ever. And I go in there and I say that, hey, this is my first time. And I had some jokes written down. And I do those, and the first two kill, and I'm so surprised, and I'm so happy. The third one was garbage. It didn't really do that well. And I walk off stage saying, oh, that went pretty well. And people were, they were congratulating me. And one guy afterwards was like, oh, I could tell that was your first time because you didn't move the mic stand.
Oh, my gosh. Wow.
I did my entire set with the mic stand right in front of my face, and I didn't move because, I feel like nowadays I'm pretty immobile on stage, but I didn't move at all, and I was like, okay, that probably looked stupid, but I still felt really good, and I threw up before that set because
oh my gosh. Stage fright.
It was stage fright. It was me cramming everything that I was going to say. And I had a beer. I thought that would help calm my nerves. I had a beer and I was shaking. I ended up vomiting, but I was like, okay, the worst is over. Now let's go on stage. Yeah. And then I also found out that mic is known to be more accepting. So they laugh a little more easier. So I was like, this could have all sucked. And that's what but I'm thankful for that support because that's what propelled me to keep doing this.
Yeah.
In a way.
And what did it take for you to do the second one?
I guess just that energy of the first one. And it was not just the laughs that I got. It was more of that adrenaline rush was there too. And I was just like, okay, I have to do this again. And I think after my first time doing it, I had that sense that, okay, this is probably something that I'm going to be doing for, if not the rest of my life, for a very, very long time. Yeah. Yeah, I just had that feeling after the first time I went up. And I keep thinking if I hadn't done so well that first time, would I still be doing it? I think so. Yeah. Just because that rush was so real.
How have you found the difference between your long form writing and writing for the stage?
That is a great question that I'm still trying to figure out. It's more conversational, first of all. Ooh, this is what I've learned. It's not so much about big words, and you don't have to focus on how you're forming sentences as much when you're on stage, whereas in writing, you do have to make things sound pretty and have more of an eloquent flow to it. Yeah. Whereas if you're on stage, you can be way more choppy with your words. It's more natural to people. People relate to that more. And it's almost funnier if you don't have a punchline that's precisely crafted and threaded neatly. It's if you have something that's just oh, here's a thought that just came into my head, that spontaneity is just so much more funnier. And I noticed that on more refined comics is that you can tell that their bit is structured, but it's much more conversational. Yeah. Whereas in long form writing, you have to make it sound a little more intricately woven, if I can say.
Yeah. And is that a part of your brain that you're pretty comfortable with? The adapting to that difference for the stage?
I think I was just so new to both of those forms that I wouldn't say I really mastered one over the other. Because I know people like Karina who've been writing for years and years and years and then go into stand-up. They have more of that foundation in one type of writing. And then, I don't know, maybe the transition is easier. I can't really speak for other people's experiences. But for mine, it's honestly something that I'm still trying to figure out and see how I can translate my writing brain into something that's more adaptable for the stage. And I'm sure, because you've done stand-up, right? Yeah, here and there. It is more fun when you see someone go up and they're just talking about their day or just telling you a story. It's not necessarily like, this is my opinion and this is why you should listen to it. And I feel like that's more the sentiment behind more of the long form journalism and writing. Maybe not in that uppity sense all the time.
Yeah.
But it's more like people have short attention spans. That's what I'm saying.
That's right. That's right.
In any medium that you're trying to present, you're not going to have their full attention span. So you kind of have to start off the top with something gripping.
Yeah. I'm toying with either asking you how long you were in New York, or there's this question that I think just selfishly I want answered. Like, you finish college and you're going through college. Are there influences that you're starting to notice from the comedic universe? You know, you mentioned the Joan Rivers early on about how, most people were dropping her name. But now that you're back in the States and starting to settle, are there names that you started to take notice of in the comic world? Also, you're in New York, so you're in the mecca of New York of comedy.
Yeah, names that I've been starting to take notice of. I always loved Chelsea Peretti.
Yes,
she's one of my favorites, and Natasha Leggero as well. I just like her brand of just being like a princess.
Yeah. Yes.
Weaving that into something funny and just finding the humor and being a spoiled brat, because I feel like so much of my childhood was just being a spoiled brat, and owning that is something that's so funny to me. Like taking these things that you've been taking for granted essentially your whole life. Yeah. And then that other people see it. Like, this is what doing comedy has kind of helped me see, is that I have certain qualities that I know other people can see. Yeah. So just taking those and amplifying those or making them more absurd is perfect to me. 'Cause then it's another way of just accepting yourself the way you are. Yeah. Like, okay, there's nothing that I can do to change this. There's nothing that I can do to change me being a brat in the past. And like, I've told stories of me in the past, just the shit I would say, and people would be like, wow, you were really something. And I'm like, I can't change that anymore. Like, that's just who I was.
Have you seen Matthew Broussard?
Yes.
He's very much in that camp too. It's like, he looks like the GQ model, and he addresses it almost always up front. Yeah. That, look, I know I look like a douche. But I'm here to tell you, I know it. Yeah, I know it, and I'm owning it. Yeah. He's not like, look, I know I look like a douche, but I promise you I'm a nice guy. Right. I give to charity. He never, which if he does, that's great. I'm not saying that because someone looks a certain way, they're not going to do, basic, nice things. Yeah. But I just love that he takes that and he makes it so insanely absurd to the point where people were like, I wasn't even thinking about that, but okay. Yeah, that's something that's very interesting. People having to bring up if they look a certain way, and they almost always have to start off with that. I mean, I'm sure it might get exhausting at some point, right? I think so, yeah. I've noticed that the last few times I've seen him, he doesn't bring that up. Yeah. And maybe because he's tired of it, and he's earned enough credibility, and he's got the resume basically to prove that,
not
dude,
always
I'm
have
funny.
to despite how I look, I'm funny. Yeah. But I don't think it's as much as a problem for him as probably I was talking to another comic in the scene who's gay, and he says I always have to bring that up because my voice sounds a certain way and people are always thinking about it. And I think he was also going towards the camp of, I don't have to do this anymore. I've done enough to where I don't always have to bring this up. People know my name, people know my style, so it's not like, okay, this is what I'm about.
It may be kind of like a debutante thing. When you're first early on, you're unsure of yourself, and so putting out there who you are is a way to say, look, this is who I am. You can relate to me. I'm not that weird, and it's okay. It's going to be fine. And then once you have a little more experience, and you're like, I really don't have to put that out there. It's either people see it or they don't. I don't care. I'm funny. I'm trying these other things to.
Right. You can separate yourself from what you think people think you are because your ideas speak for themselves.
Right.
Yeah. I have a friend who's very attractive and he's very funny.
Is he single? No, just sorry.
No, he's not. Because I'm dating him. But
that's great. Sorry, this isn't supposed to be like the Yuck Yuck podcast, but I had to, and you responded so beautifully.
But I promise this is relevant. But before I really knew him that well, I had a friend who we'd seen one of his shows, and she was like, "Man, he's so talented that I forgot he's hot."
Oh,
and I was just like, that's kind of beautiful in a sense that someone can separate themselves from something so primal that people see something right in front of them.
Yeah.
And he's talented enough to where for a second they're focused on what their mind is going through rather than like their animal instincts, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I don't want to make that sound too crude, but it's just, it takes a lot of talent and I guess like more experience to where you can separate them yourself from your face or anything else.
Okay, well, let's get back to the tangent that I wanted to also pursue, and that is, how long were you in New York? And, were you starting to get a lot more open mics under your belt and more notice?
I was in New York for, May of 2015 through September. So around 4 months I was there. And I was there on an internship. And I was actually writing for a publication at that time.
Okay.
And I started doing open mics towards the end of that internship. So I remember I had like 1 more week left. And then I had about 3 weeks left in New York just to hang out. And I was like, okay, might as well start doing stuff to fill my time and keep my brain active. And that's when I started doing those open mics.
Okay.
And I didn't do a whole lot in New York. But the thing I love about New York is that you get to be on stage so many times. And your brain is just always churning because you're walking around and you're in the subway and you're just... you're not at home just on your couch petting your dog, listening to music. It's more of an active lifestyle. And the more I'm physically active, I find the more I'm mentally active too. And so I was just writing more jokes, and maybe I was also excited about starting stand-up, and that's why I was writing so much. But either way, New York has more of like that creative energy. Not saying that it's absent here,
right.
But it's just at a higher turnover rate over there.
A lot of people that I talk to are in towns, and coming to Austin is a conscious decision about pursuing comedy as a stair step to going to New York or going to LA. So what gets you from, you mentioned it was an internship that you had in New York, and now that we know that your family and you have roots here in Austin, is that what gets you back to Austin? Or were you at that point thinking, all right, I know Austin has a cool comedy scene, so it actually makes sense for me to come here?
I wasn't even really sure what I was doing when I left New York because I knew I wanted to come back. The internship that I had, I was trying to turn into a full-time job, and it didn't work out. So I came to Austin because my family was here. And I thought, okay, I'll just see them for 2 weeks, and then I'll come back and try to figure things out. And then those 2 weeks turned into the present. Like, I'm still here. And I just really ended up liking it here. And my first open mic in Austin was the Rattle Inn, RIP. And that went terrible. Oh, so bad.
Why?
Because I was too drunk.
Oh, Had you not learned from that first open mic?
No, it took me almost a year to learn not to do that. I would say nowadays I never drink before I go on stage because I like being more present and calling things out. And I feel like I can't do that when I'm drinking because I'm like way more in my head and more focused on how I'm doing rather than how the audience is doing. And I want to be able to be aware of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it took a very long time for me to be like, okay, no more drinking before going up on stage. Because I was trying to combat my nerves. So I did that mic. It was so bad. I was crying in my car. I'm like, I'm never going to do stand-up again. And then 1 week later, I was out in Austin again. And yeah, that's just how that started. Ty was one of the first people I ever met in Austin. Yeah, that was so funny. He like came up to me and he's like, oh, are you doing stand-up for the first time? And I'm like, no, just in Austin for the first time. Yeah. But
he's so sweet.
I know.
It's interesting that you had you felt like you had such a miserable experience to the point of tears, but that you came back. So once you got your presence of mind, what was it that made you come back?
I mean, I've cried many times after certain sets.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, just look for me in my car. If you think that I've bombed, chances are I'm in my car sobbing my face. Nah, it's not as bad anymore.
And I actually don't have, I mean, not to say that your experience is necessarily unique, but no, I don't know that anybody has ever admitted that to me. So, how brutal is it to, have those feelings, but then be like, I mean,
but still,
it's kind of like being with the abuser, right? I mean, you have something that makes you feel like such shit after the fact, but you're like, I want more.
But those few times that it's gone so great are enough to propel you to get up and keep doing it. Yeah. That's what I think. And
you've adapted. You've changed the less drinking.
Yeah.
To get a hold of those.
Yeah. And now I think it's less personal. Like, I take it less personally because if I was drinking and I bomb, I'd be like, okay, it's because of this drinking problem that I did this bad. But now if I'm just, if a set doesn't go well, I'll be like, I need to write better. It's very instinctual for people to take their successes and attribute them to ideas, but take the failures and be like, oh, this reflects me as a person, which it doesn't. Like, people are very nuanced. Yeah. This is just one little fragment of their entire life experience. Yeah. And that's not going to project your entire being. And, that's something I actively tell myself every day, that just because you bombed one 8-minute set doesn't mean you're a shitty person.
Right.
So
right. Let's abandon the bad stuff, and let's talk about like some of the you go through open mics for a while here in Austin, and then you start getting booked on shows, and because you hadn't spent as much time to build that momentum in New York, how did that start feeding your ego? That's such a terrible way to say it. How did that boost your confidence? Because it sounds like you've been battling this, so terrible kind of mentality. Yeah. Have did you let that start feeding your confidence more?
I think the thing that fed my confidence was just the work and just doing it over and over and over again, to where if you've been on stage 200 times and a few times have gone wrong, and then a few times have been okay, a few times have been great. So you just have more of a pool to draw off of. Whereas if you've been on stage twice and one set was really bad, it brings you down more, Yeah. But if you've had all these times of doing it, you're just going to keep going.
Right.
Because you're like, okay, if I bomb, that's fine. Just going to do it again, see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because you also start accepting the rooms are fickle. And you never know what kind of crowd you're going to be in front of. Yeah. And some are just totally open to whatever you have. And others are like, whatever.
Here's the thing I'm a bit conflicted about is when people do a bad set and they're like, ooh, the room wasn't good or the crowd was weird today. And I hate doing that. Well, sometimes, sure, sometimes it might be valid if you're at Mr. Tramp's at 1 a.m. and there are 2 people in the audience. You're not going to have a stellar set.
Right.
So you have to take a bunch of things into consideration. But I don't know. I don't know about you or if anyone else has talked about this, but I just never like saying, oh, the audience was weird today.
You know, it's interesting because that has come up before, and I think the people that I've mentioned that concept to also have a very similar reaction, because it's like, well, you're the one up on stage, so in a sense, it's on you. But as an observer of comedy, like I've seen a ton of shows, I can read. I have a read on the room, and there are some shows, like I recently saw a comic, just love her to death. I thought her set was magnificent, but the audience was so lukewarm, and I was like, fuck you people, you have no fucking idea. And it pisses me off. And so I'm like the dumb cheerleader in the front row saying, you're awesome. And everybody around me is like, what? So, as an audience member, I feel comfortable saying sometimes the rooms suck. And they don't give you the credit that you deserve.
But I feel like that's okay because you're the audience member.
That's right.
Yeah,
and I have a responsibility to reward you because because I go to so many shows, I've seen a lot of people grow up, if you will. Of course. And so I know the work that they've put in and going to open mics and getting booked on shows. So it's like, hey, you yahoos who just came in from the street because you happen to see, free show in the Chronicle. They don't recognize the work that has gone into being there that night.
Oh, of course. And it's also the fact that you've known this comic for a long time and you've seen her grow, like you said, and you have that more of a special connection than these yahoo-has who just walked in and are seeing this person for the first time. Like this could be the best comic in Austin, but they'll walk away saying that person was okay. Yeah. And you're like, what? Who are you? You don't know anything.
Right. I find myself getting more and more matronly about the scene. Like, these are all my little chick hens. And, I love them so much and I want to.
Yeah, you want them to grow and develop and get laughs and be as loved as you love them, essentially. Yeah. But there have been so many instances where I have walked up to a comic and been like, fuck everyone else. I thought this joke was so funny. Yeah. You should hold on to it. Yeah. So, I just hope that they're not as affected by certain rooms. But I mean, everyone is. It's only human. Right.
So you're back in Austin in fall of 2015. Did you tackle the big elephant in the room, spring of 2016, the funniest person?
Ooh, I did. Yeah? I did do that. Yeah. And that was the first time I performed in front of a crowd that large. Yeah. And probably the most recent time I've performed in front of a crowd that large, because I would say 100+ people. Yeah. And it's such a great experience. I think I knew that I would in advance because I was so new to stand up. Yeah. I mean, I had a great set. I had such a fun set and I had a great time doing it. And that was experience that I wouldn't trade for the world, because after that, everything felt more manageable by comparison. So I was like, if I could do that, then I could do most of, maybe not every room in Austin, but I would feel comfortable doing most, if not every room in Austin, despite me, not being experienced enough for certain places, which is fine. Yeah. But I wasn't as terrified after that.
And are you planning on
Am I planning on doing it again? Yeah, I am. Which, good reminder, I need to go to Cap City and fill out that application. Yeah. But I just don't like the divide it creates within the community. I feel like it gets a little bit too competitive and there's just a lot of shade thrown around, and people can be spiteful because someone advanced when they didn't. And some people advance all the way to finals some years and then they don't the next year. Yeah. And so there's just a lot of weird energy between March and April. Yeah. But other than that, I've always loved FPIA and like the scene in general. It's great.
Yeah, it has just become inevitable that there's always like this little chunk in these interviews that is the FPIA philosophical corner.
Yeah. You should have a separate podcast that is the FPIA.
I should. Yeah, like they have the TV show podcast. You know, it's like, okay, let's do the FPIA podcast. Oh, that might actually be fun to do.
Yeah,
like a breakdown of the. Ooh, you might have just inspired an idea as if I need more things to do in the day. But
right,
I'm gonna
okay,
think
nix
about that.
Everything we've talked about, and it's only FPIA from here on out. Well, people who are listening to this right now are shutting it down. I know.
Yeah, no, it is interesting as the contest has gotten bigger, and that's one thing having come into the scene in the last couple of years. But me talking to people and knowing a little bit more about the history of Austin, that sounded so presumptuous. That was just terrible way to put that. So I've talked to people who, and you I'm sure have too, when, you know, the FPIA was 100 people or not even that many. And now it's 200 plus
50 or something.
Yeah.
It's insane.
So you almost have to take almost a laissez-faire attitude about it, that, you know, 250, it's going to be a crapshoot. You never know who the judges are going to be. You know, some people are actually going to be qualified to judge. Others are going to be not necessarily qualified to be able to, you know, like I was saying with me watching comedy, like I know who's put in the work,
of course,
who's really earned their place on that stage versus somebody who's newer and not as prepared, not as polished, whatever. And some judges might not have seen that if they've come in from out of town, but they have, you know, oh, I'm from Comedy Central. That's cool. But they're specifically looking for a thing, as opposed to, well, should a contest really instead be rewarding somebody's work? Or should it be, oh, they happen to match the thing we're looking for this particular year? And I think as more people have entered, you almost have to say, well, you know, this is just an opportunity for me to be in front of 100, 200 people, because I may not get that chance for another year. And, you know, fuck the haters.
Exactly. Fuck the haters. Fuck most competitions, because stand-up is already so ego-fueled, and the competitions just blow that out of proportion. So, don't fret.
Right. Just, you know, work through the season. It's just a couple months. Yeah, because it's April through May. Yeah, just work through that, and then the rest of the year is just back to fun.
Get back to it. Yeah.
Are there cool things that you'd like to start doing? We were talking before we recorded that you were hosting one open mic, and now you're hosting a new one.
Yes.
And you've done some festivals.
Yeah.
So how has it been entering those aspects of comedy? The hosting and the festivals.
Oh, hosting is great. I love hosting because I get to just hang out with the crowd. You know, like everyone's my friend, and we're just having a fun time, and you get to set the energy, and I really like that. I feel like I'm someone who's generally more energetic than I am deadpan. So it's just very fun for me to set the tone and then let the comics take over. And I'm definitely still learning a lot about hosting and not making it the Nikita show, but it's more about everyone else, and you're just kind of facilitating things. And I really enjoy that. I've been hosting Playpen since June, and me and Elizabeth Spears, we just really, like, to say lightly, fuck around for the first 4 minutes, because we're supposed to, you know how like every open mic, the hosts start with a set, and then the other comics come on, but we just do like weird sketches or PowerPoint based comedy. That's our favorite. That's our new thing.
Oh, that's great.
And then as of lately, we've been bringing Mowgli, my dog, on stage. And the last time we had this bit where I brought Mowgli on stage, and our whole shtick was Elizabeth had turned into a dog. And she was just talking about it. It's making me laugh. But she was in the tech booth at the New Movement. And I would like put the microphone to Mowgli, and she'd talk.
Oh, my God.
It was so funny to us, but nobody else was laughing.
Man.
Which is fine. Which, at the end of the day, if you're having a good time,
that's right.
The more you do something stupid and just commit to the bit, sometimes it works out really well.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't, but at least you walk out of it thinking, hey, I had a good time.
Yeah. How cool is it that you've made this jump from being so nervous about being on stage to now you're hosting a show?
Oh, thank you.
I mean, do you actually let yourself recognize the progress of that?
Sometimes, yeah. Out of necessity, I think, because I think generally, well, people are hard on themselves, but I think that I always need to step back when I'm putting too much pressure on myself and realize, oh, you've done some cool things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and this has been I'm almost at 2 years now. So the first 2 years of me doing this, and it's been so fun, and I've learned so much. I've learned like the equivalent to learning in a lifetime in these past 2 years, and they've all been things that I've been wanting to work on. So it's really, really exciting to have all these opportunities. And Austin is such a great city to start. I know that when I first started here, people were like, oh, Austin's not a good place to start anymore because there's so many talented people here and you're just going to get lost in the crowd. And it's actually the opposite, because of course there are so many talented people here, but there's so many opportunities to where if you just put in the work, you will be one of those talented people.
Right. How did festivals start coming about?
Festivals, I just kind of started doing those independently, I would apply by myself.
Yeah.
And Out of Bounds was great because it was here, but I was just talking about this yesterday, that I don't think I want to be doing festivals anymore, or at least for a few more years, because they're a lot of money for not that much stage time. They're a lot of money for essentially stage time you could be getting here at no cost. Paying like $500 to go to LA versus a $3 parking ticket in Austin. Yeah. It's just...
doesn't make sense.
Yeah, from a financial standpoint, it doesn't make sense. And I mean, just based off of that, I find that some of these things can be scams in some way. Yeah. And you have those application fees, and it's just, I can't. While my talent is still getting nurtured, which I mean is a lifelong journey, but to the point where I'm not ready to be in front of industry yet, I'm not going to do festivals. But that's just my personal.
Well, no. I'm not. Yeah, my silence shouldn't be taken as I am sitting in judgment, because you should be. No, more and more the conversation swings to exactly what you've said, and I find that interesting. That it's almost like it's very, very micro in the group of people that I've sat down with, but it almost feels like the pendulum is shifting quite starkly to. Festivals are a waste of money. They're the S word, scam, because you don't get that much payoff. And sure, it looks nice to have that on your credits, but you'll eventually get there, and you might get invited to other festivals that are even more powerful. So I was reflecting on the fact that seems to be coming through so much more frequently now. That people are saying, I'm not doing festivals. The application fees aren't worth it for me. It's so that's what I was reacting to. I just think you are very consistent with what I've been hearing more and more. Okay. And I find that interesting.
That's been the general sentiment, at least here in Austin, where people are like, I don't know about festivals. Because there are a lot of
spoiled as fuck here. I mean, we've got Moon Tower, South by. Not that everybody can necessarily get on them, but between that, ACL, Out of Bounds, and I want to say there's something else. It's like
I mean, just this past weekend there was the Southwest Berkeley Improv Festival, and that, I mean, if you're an improviser, is such a great experience, and you do it for free. You can just get up on stage. I actually. Technically, I can say that I did that festival because yesterday I took a workshop, and that night I performed a set, and that was part of the festival. So technically, I can say that, which is really cool.
So you're doing an improv thing now?
Yeah. No, I've always been doing. I mean, I've been doing stand up a little longer, but I've been doing improv for probably exactly a year now.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So you're totally just, that stage fright is behind you now.
There are always nerves here and there,
Yeah.
but I just try to get up on stage as much as I can. I mean, it's really fun to me. And I want to master the trifecta of stand-up, improv, and sketch. Let's see how it goes. Because ideally, I would want to focus on one thing more than the other.
Yeah.
Right now, I really, really think that it's between stand-up and sketch.
Okay.
Because the sketch channels that writing brain of mine that I've been always more attuned to.
Yeah.
Not saying that I don't have fun with anything else, but
right.
those two have been like neck to neck right now. So, yeah.
Well, that's very cool to hear, because a lot of times that type of question gets, no, I'm pretty comfortable with the stand-up. Maybe one day I'll do improv. Or,
And that one day just never happens.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, that is very nice to hear. And it sounds, when you were describing the playpen, it sounds like you are kind of doing that sketch thing.
Yeah. We try to sprinkle in something or the other. Or there's that weird brand doesn't even really fall into the stand-up improv sketch umbrella. It's like, if you've ever been to Sandbox with Rob Gagnon, it's just people literally do whatever on stage, any type of performance art, and I feel like that is its own genre. You should definitely go to that show. It's so unique and it's so interesting, because you have stand-ups or improvisers or sketch people, and they're just doing something that's totally out of their comfort zone. And it can be something as, like, they can just be singing or doing funny songs. Or I brought Mowgli on stage and I like told a story while playing Frisbee with him and people loved it. And it's just like, that doesn't really fall into any category.
Right. What kind of things do you see for yourself in the next year? Because the 3-year mark becomes like such a formative one for somebody that's relatively new.
Right. So like, I would say, so I'm hitting 2 years this August. I'm not, I mean, I'm definitely going to be more involved in sketch. Looking at making that more of like at least a monthly commitment to where I have certain sketches performed.
Yeah.
And as far as stand-up goes, I don't want to say anything and then like not have it happen. Like, I don't want to say, oh, I want to be on Punch this year, and then if it doesn't happen, I beat myself up for it. But what is something that people say? Like, because it's hard to measure things in time, right?
Well, it's almost a trick question.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people say, well, I don't want to commit to anything and then disappoint myself.
Yes, that's
so a lot of people are very, I'm just taking one open mic or one show performance at a time, and hey, if I get invited to host or feature for a comic down the road, that's just going to be exciting.
And then on the flip side, you'll have people expecting you to do certain things because you're 2 to 3 years in. Right. So I try not to measure it in terms of time, but I will say I would love to headline. I think that would be really fun. Having a longer set, that's really, really great practice. I feel like the longest set I've done is 12 minutes at a show. So I would love to do like 15 to 20, maybe even 30.
Yeah, it seems really intimidating. But when you've built up over time, and especially as a prolific writer. Yeah. I may be putting words in your mouth, but I would imagine coming up with material to fill that time isn't actually a stretch.
Oh, no, not at all. Yeah. I feel like I write so much. I might even have 2 hours worth of stuff by now. But it's most of it is pretty choppy. Yeah. I would say like 30 to maybe 40% is a bit more fleshed out, but everything else is like, oh, here's an idea, here's a tweet, here's a premise, and then putting all that together, I could probably fill up 2 hours, but it won't be very good.
Yeah, that has been my observation, that, it's not necessarily about having the material, it's about putting it in an order that makes sense for the longer stretch of time. Yeah,
and coming up with new tags or just new aspects to the story and somehow still making all that conversational and fun for the audience.
Right. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Lots of good stuff on the horizon for you, I'm sure.
Oh, thank you. I'm very excited.
Well, I think we'll start winding down, and I like to revisit that past word, and I'm like, well, the tumultuous. I think you were right that, wasn't so much as negative as the connotation seems to imply.
Not.
It's just, you've moved around a lot.
I've moved around a lot, done a lot of different things just to see which one fits. And I feel like comedy's definitely been what I've been going towards.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Well, one more.
Sure.
One word to describe your future.
Ooh. I don't want to say bright or uncertain because that's pretty much everyone's future. Let's see. Give me a second. Oh man, this is tough. Maybe I'll just go with bright and uncertain. Oh man, I don't want to wrap this up so cliche.
That's your writer's critique right there talking.
Yeah.
As opposed to just going with your gut.
Okay.
You're being an editor in your brain.
I am being an editor. Yeah. You're right. Fulfilling two responsibilities at once.
Oh. This has been
Let's go with spontaneous.
Spontaneous?
Yeah.
Okay, look at you, the editor.
This could just be a separate podcast on itself. Me trying to come up with words for my future.
Right.
Hold on, let me get a thesaurus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want a dictionary? I'm sure I can find one here. Okay, well, let's spend some time talking about the stuff that you have going on. Promote Playpen again.
Okay, so Playpen is an open mic that we do every Tuesday, 8 p.m. at the New Movement, and we only allow new material. So stuff that has...
How do you vet that out?
We know.
Okay.
Me and Elizabeth are around enough.
That's funny.
So anything that you've either just thought of, as long as it hasn't been done before or it's maybe done once.
Yeah.
We like to have people flesh things out and have people rely on their instincts more.
Yeah. And it's a weekly.
It is Tuesday. A weekly, yeah. And the sign up is via email at playpentnm@gmail.com.
Very good. That is a wrap on Comedy Wham Presents. Nikita Redkar, tell us where we can find you on social media, your awesome website with all of, oh my gosh, people, we haven't even talked really in depth about your writing. Your writing is available on your website.
It is available,
so tell us where we find you.
Website is just nikitaredkar.com, exactly how my name is spelled. And Twitter handle is @TheRedkarReport. And Instagram, if you're a more visual person, is Nikita Red.
Very good. Go follow her. We hope you've enjoyed learning about how Nikita got to be the comedic genius that you heard today, just as much as I have. Be sure to visit ComedyWham.com and give us a follow on Twitter and Instagram @ComedyWham. You can listen to past interviews on Stitcher, Google Play, and iTunes. This has been Comedy Wham Presents. Nikita Redkar. I'm Valerie, and that's been funny. Thank you, Nikita.
Thank you, Valerie.